you will see a lot of what I talk about starts off in what we would consider the green economy, but you see the strong correlation between the green and blue economies. So in 2014, I started Red Diamond Campos, a biotech business that develops organic and biologic soil treatment, crop protection, and livestock solutions made primarily from plant and animal-based resources, rejuvenating soils, bringing new life and vitality, ensuring that you have access to the most nutrient-rich foods. This is the mission that I'm dedicated to accomplish. Now, if you knew me 10 years ago, this is probably the last thing you would imagine me saying today as I stand before you. But in 2014, I was battling my own health crisis. And I was dealing with an illness that has such a confusing name that the doctors just call it mono for short. But at the same time, I realized there were many people dealing with diseases and other illnesses that were much more severe than what I was dealing with. And a large part of their ability to fight against them, to overcome them, and be resilient against them was connected in part to the quality of what they were consuming. Now, I'm the type of person that always believed no matter what I decided to put my energy and focus toward, I would be able to master that thing. So it was during this 1 week, this life-changing week for me, where I began to improve the quality of the foods that I was consuming, that I decided I was going to go all in. I was going to start on a journey and a path towards something that at that present time I didn't know a lot about, but I was eager to learn as much as I could. Now, 1 month after deciding to start Red Diamond, I developed my first business plan. Now, this was a plan that I intended to submit at the time to the International Finance Corporation, the IFC. And this was a 7-figure plan that, again, I planned to submit to them. And you could say at the time it was quite ambitious. So I submitted the plan. And the thing is, today in the world of entrepreneurship, you tend to hear people with varying views about business plans. But one of the things that I definitely learned at that particular stage was how little I knew about this, journey that I was about to embark on. I had many questions to answer about the science, about the market, the business model, and the industry overall that I sought to enter. So in case you're wondering, I did submit the plan to the IFC, and I actually had a positive response. And at 19 years old, I was on a conference call with 2 representatives from the organization. And that conference call went pretty well. Although I wish it went a lot better and they would have written me a check. But nonetheless, it was a positive experience and it had given me a vote of confidence that I really needed at that time. And with that, I knew that there was more work that was needed to be done. So we live in a region where over 90% of the products that are applied on farms are toxic synthetic chemicals. And this is a statistic really that I compiled comprising over 10 years of data. And during this chapter of my journey, I came to a realization. Now, it was very difficult in those early months and years to find access to a lot of data and information on Barbados and the other islands across the region. I used to spend several days at a time scouring the internet, looking for information, whether it's on, the science side or the industry. And I realized there was this huge gap. And not having the money to purchase data when it was available, I had to use the only resources I had, which was myself, my computer, and thankfully the internet. And relying on what I say are some particular set of skills that I acquired during my school years, I was able to continue scouring the internet until I attained that information that I was looking for. But what this showed me in a major way was the huge gap, which is big data. Whether it's the absence of it or the inability to access it. And again, whether we're talking about the blue economies or other sectors across our region, I realized that this inability to access these vast platforms of data was something that was an obstacle, inhibiting us and crippling us from being able to progress quickly. So after my initial research into human health and food and nutrition, I transitioned and went focusing on how to build healthy soils, healthy plants, and how to go about repairing our delicate ecosystems. And for me and my journey, this brought some new challenges. I quickly realized that I was actually learning a new language, and the people in my environment, it was a language they didn't know. It was not one that they really understood. So I found it difficult to explain to people what exactly I was doing and what exactly I was trying to accomplish. So it took me quite a while to learn how to simplify it, put it into layman's terms. And this became more apparent to me as I went to various exhibitions and workshops and networking events. But I don't know if you can relate to the experience, but it can be a very frustrating thing when you're in a place where it seems like there's no one that can speak the same language as you, and furthermore, able to understand the language that you're speaking. But even so, as my passion continued to grow and I continued to learn more, I was able to then simplify or summarize my focus into two simple elements. And that was the objective of reducing the toxicity and increasing the nutritional quality of the foods that we consume. And this led me into the next chapter, which was sargassum. Now, by a show of hands, how many of you believe that sargassum is a huge issue that's affecting our region? It's something that stinks. It is destroying our beaches and costing us a lot of money. Right, show of hands? Yeah. And it would be, a bit difficult to argue against that point. But for me, I never saw sargassum as this huge issue. Again, I had a particular perspective about it. I saw sargassum as a major opportunity. And it is that underlying principle that I had learned throughout my journey that allowed me to shape the way I approach the sargassum situation. And that was that for results to be achieved, resources must be allocated to opportunities rather than problems. Again, it reads, for results to be achieved, resources must be allocated to opportunities rather than problems. Now, if we think about what much of the sentiment and conversation surrounding sargassum has been for the past few years, we can say it hasn't been quite positive. But this was the underlying principle that guided me. Sorry. Now, this is a photo I took one time when I was out harvesting sargassum. So this was one afternoon out on the East Coast. And as you can see, there's not a soul in sight. It was just myself and the elements. And I would go out, collect it in about 50, 60-pound bags, put it on my shoulder, lift it to the vehicle, take it back home, and start to work and develop my solutions. And we like to talk a lot about opportunities and entrepreneurship and innovation, developing the way forward for the future. But for young persons such as myself who seek to develop new ways and methods and approaches of doing things, despite the odds, this presents us with a new major opportunity that we need to be capitalizing, that we need to be putting a lot of support behind, infrastructure behind. We need to get to the place where if we're serious about developing our nation, our region, developing our economies, and the blue economy specifically, we need to change the way we think and look at the opportunities that we're presented with. We need to change the way we capitalize and monetize those opportunities. We also need to get rid of outdated ideas that limit the way we think or the way we believe we can impact the world from our corner, from our aisle. And the way we choose to address these opportunities that we're presented with, whether we act quickly or not, and if you don't get it by now, the longer that we take to act, to be proactive rather than reactive, pretty much at this point, it's being reactive. But the longer we take, the more we're going to have to pay in the end. So whatever approach you choose to take, for example, it could lead to the result of you, your children, or your grandchildren consuming foods that are pretty much as similar as consuming poisons because they're so toxic. Or your approach to our opportunities could mean the difference of consuming the sweetest, most nutrient-rich foods that you all could imagine. For me, I was never afraid to take the first step. The why behind I'm doing what I'm doing, and my passion and my purpose continues to drive me as my journey goes on. Thank you.